The AAA gaming industry has been imploding lately, but it's also not something that is wholly unexpected. AAA publishers have become increasingly voracious in their greed and will throw anyone and everyone under the bus to achieve their goals being to get all the money in the world. One of the most recent examples of C-suite stupidity was the closure of numerous Bethesda studios under the umbrella of Microsoft's Xbox platform. These closures included Tango Gameworks, who produced the adored Hi-Fi Rush, only for those same people to say that they needed more titles like Hi-Fi Rush. Like, make up your mind, you out-of-touch, smooth-brained sons of... So it's pretty clear that Microsoft and Xbox are as wicked as they come, and yet they have a studio like Ninja Theory in their portfolio. A studio whose development and pipeline philosophy are notably counter AAA. So it comes as quite a surprise that Microsoft, a company whose portfolio is filled with safe or predictable games, aside from an exception or two, would allow for a game as focused and self-contained as Senua Saga Hellblade II to exist. It was expensive and long to develop, but hot damn is it worth it.
Who's there? What did they say?
Hellblade 2 takes the DNA of the original game and transports it from Helheim to 10th century Iceland. Senua's people have been getting captured, and so she intentionally gets herself captured to follow the trail of slavers back to their home and put an end to it. It doesn't take long to figure out that things in this land have gone awry, and Senua's simple goal would be anything but. This shift from an internal to an external goal doesn't interfere with Hellblade's focus on conveying the personal experience of Senua though, and instead it allows for a broader platform to explore Senua as a character. Senua's experience with her inner voices returns, but with a little bit of a twist. Senua already dealt with her inner voices being an overwhelming force of paranoia and negativity. Core conceit of the first game was Senua having to overcome the challenges her own mind presented her. They would feed off her fears and insecurities and constantly belittle her or give cause to her paranoia. In Hellblade 2, the voices are a little more varied. They still are mostly personifications of her insecurities and fears, but they also are used as vessels for empathy. There will be moments where her inner voices are surprisingly reasonable and understanding. It's this variety in messaging from the voices that does a great job of displaying Senua's growth from the previous game. She has learned to not let her darkness control her, and she is now able to try and be more empathetic and harmonious with those around her. A big change from the first game to now is the presence of a supporting cast. The first game was all about Senua, so there weren't really people for her to directly engage with. Hellblade 2 is not a repeat of this, and so Senua has companions who she travels with. These characters fill various roles, but all serve the same underlying purpose, to push the themes of growth and empathy. Each character's story is born of some kind of tragedy or misery, and Senua can exist as a catalyst for their hope and their healing. There is far more to how these themes are implemented and explored in Hellblade 2, but I will leave that for you to discover. The beauty of this game is how it reveals these things to you, and it would be remiss of me to deprive you of that. Even though the game is a larger scale by proxy of it having a supporting cast, the game never loses sight of its goals and ensures that every moment is as focused and self-contained as the first game. This is a deeply intimate game, and every moment aids in the delivery of its overall themes and story. Even the puzzles are used as a subtle storytelling device. In the first game, the puzzles always felt a bit bizarre because of their construction and existence in the world, with the suspension of disbelief coming in to prevent you from questioning how these puzzles could exist. In Hellblade 2, the presence of other characters makes it much more evident that the terrain-altering puzzles are more figments of Senua's imagination, as they almost exclusively come around when the other characters are not present. Much like the first game, any notion of playing this without headphones on is criminal. The tension from Senua's voices feeling like they are talking directly to you is paramount to the experience as a whole. You can try focusing in on an element or object of the world, tuning out any external noises, but these voices will remain. There is no silencing them. The sound design beyond these voices is equally important to the atmosphere too. The sounds of dripping water in caverns, the yelling and screaming of characters during chaotic fighting scenes, and the aural feedback of the game's combat are just sublime. Speaking of combat, that's a part of the game that has gotten quite a facelift, but not in the way that you would think. The original Hellblade was widely criticised for its basic and repetitive combat, but I'd always viewed it as a storytelling device. The nature of mental illness is repetitive and exhausting, and the combat perfectly represented that. While the game wasn't wholly comprised of combat scenarios, there was enough to the point where it felt exhausting, which is the experience Senua was having with her mental struggles. Hellblade II's combat isn't expanded upon in any sense, but its presentation is noticeably revamped. Battles are far more cinematic, and while your basic actions are still the same, their results are a little more varied and tactile, making way for combat that I can only describe as crunchy. Like seriously? Check this out. That's some pretty awesome stuff right there. If there is one thing that people will strike an issue with, it'll be the game's runtime. You can quite comfortably finish this game in under 10 hours. I'm not against a shorter runtime like this, especially when you consider the game's asking price is almost half of a standard AAA pricing, but there will undoubtedly be people who expected just a little more after a 6-year wait. Personally, I'll take a game that's shorter than 10 hours if it's great for that whole runtime, rather than a 30-hour game that's good for 12. If you wanted an immediate answer for where a lot of the work for Hellblade 2 has gone, it's hard to look beyond its visuals and performance. The game just looks incredible. The lighting is crisp, the facial animations of the characters are incredible, and the environments have been built using real-life references to Icelandic landscapes to create a visually stunning experience. The most impressive part about all this is the fact that the game seems to run incredibly well while pushing these visuals. Granted, my PC is a little overkill for most of the recommended specifications, but even with everything cranked, it was rock solid. I think the lowest frame rate I saw was 57 frames per second, and that's pretty negligible. Depending on the environment, I would probably average around 80 to 90 frames a second. Maintaining this level of performance while looking this good is nothing short of miraculous, and I can only hope that the Xbox version is just as stable. When I reviewed Hellblade back in 2017, I used the words hauntingly beautiful to describe the experience. Ninja Theory really pushed the boundaries of what we should expect from video games as a medium, and the team has once again achieved this with Senua's Saga Hellblade II. Much like its predecessor, this game is hauntingly beautiful.